My sister shared my exact location online, claiming I was overreacting. 2 hours later, the police found someone waiting outside my door. The chilling sound of my phone ringing at 2 a.m. ripped me from sleep, and what the police told me next turned my blood to ice. They'd just arrested a man with a hunting knife right outside my safe house door. But the real gut punch, my own sister, the one person I thought I could trust, had unknowingly led him directly to me, a betrayal that almost cost me everything. Just 3 months before that terrifying night, my life had been, well, completely normal. I was 32, a mid-level financial analyst at Western Regional Bank in Denver. 7 years I'd been there, steadily climbing the ladder. Nothing exciting, just a regular guy doing a good job, respected by colleagues, earning the occasional bonus. Stable, predictable. Then everything changed. It was during a routine audit for the quarterly compliance report. I stumbled across these really unusual transactions flowing through one of our high-value client accounts. The numbers were off, and the documentation? It looked deliberately convoluted, almost like it was designed to hide something. So, I dug deeper. What I found was beyond anything I could have imagined, an elaborate money laundering scheme orchestrated by none other than Jackson Harmon. Jackson, he was one of our most charismatic senior executives. Tall, perfect smile, always in designer suits. He'd remember your name, ask about your family, and always had courtside tickets to share with his favorite employees. He'd been with Western Regional for 15 years, practically a legend, rumored to be next in line for the CFO spot. But behind that charming facade, I discovered a complex web of accounts, funneling hundreds of millions of dollars for clients with seriously questionable backgrounds. The transactions were so cleverly disguised, but once I spotted the pattern, it was like a switch flipped. I couldn't unsee it. Over 3 years, this guy had cleaned a staggering amount of money right through our bank. The very next day, I went straight to my direct supervisor, Trent Wilson. Trent had always been fair, professional, someone I truly respected. He looked at my carefully organized evidence, his face going pale. "Maynard," he said, his voice grave, "if what you're showing me is correct, this could absolutely rock the entire organization." I told him I'd double and triple-checked everything. "The pattern is undeniable once you know what to look for," I insisted. Trent nodded slowly, his expression growing heavier. "You did the right thing bringing this to me. I'll take this directly to the executive committee and our compliance officer. We have protocols for this." A cold fear started to creep in. Should I be concerned about Jackson finding out I discovered this? I asked. Trent was quick to reassure me. "Absolutely not. Whistleblower protections exist for exactly this reason. Your name will be kept confidential during the investigation. Just continue your normal duties and let us handle this." I walked out of his office that day feeling this weird mix of anxiety and pride. I never thought I'd uncover fraud, but I knew, deep down, I'd done the right thing. The system would work. Bad actors would face consequences. Integrity mattered. That evening, I met my younger sister, Abby, for our weekly dinner. She was 29, worked in the marketing department at Western Regional too, though our professional paths rarely crossed. Personally, we'd always been super close, even though we were total opposites. I was cautious, analytical. She was outgoing, impulsive. "You seem distracted tonight," she said, twirling pasta at our favorite Italian spot. "Something up at work?" I hesitated, but ultimately, I decided to tell her. We confided in each other, and I trusted her discretion. Keeping my voice low, I laid out everything I'd found and my meeting with Trent. Abby's eyes went wide. "Jackson Harmon? Are you serious? He's practically royalty at the bank." I told her the evidence was clear, multiple accounts, consistent patterns, falsified documents. "Have you considered there might be a legitimate explanation?" she pushed. "Jackson's always been super nice to everyone in marketing." "Being nice doesn't make someone honest, Abby," I countered. "The numbers don't lie." She just kept twirling her pasta, looking thoughtful. "Just be careful, okay? Jackson has powerful friends, both inside and outside the bank. People who could make your life difficult. That's why we have whistleblower protections," I replied, maybe a little too confidently. "The system is designed to prevent retaliation." Abby looked unconvinced, but she dropped it. Over the next few days, I tried to focus on my regular duties, just waiting for an update. But I started noticing small, unsettling changes. Files I needed were suddenly misplaced. My computer would crash constantly, erasing hours of work. Colleagues who used to stop by my desk for a chat now seemed too busy to even make eye contact. Still, I held on to my faith in the process. I'd done the right thing, and eventually, the truth would come out. 2 weeks passed. No word from Trent. I was starting to get really anxious when his assistant finally called to schedule a meeting. I walked into his office, feeling a hopeful flutter. Maybe my findings had been validated. But Trent didn't stand to greet me as he usually did. He remained seated behind his desk, his expression utterly unreadable. "Maynard, thank you for coming. Please close the door and have a seat." Something in his tone sent a cold spear of dread through my stomach. "The executive committee and compliance team have thoroughly reviewed your allegations regarding Jackson Harmon," Trent said, his voice formal, distant. "After careful examination, they have determined that no impropriety has occurred." I blinked, confused. "That's not possible. The evidence was clear. What you identified were legitimate transactions for our international clients," he continued, as if reciting a script. "The complexity you noted is due to cross-border banking regulations, not any attempt at concealment. But the documentation was falsified." I insisted. "The dates were altered, signatures didn't match." Trent sighed, leaning back. "Maynard, you are an excellent analyst, but these matters are more complex than they might appear to someone at your level. The committee found no irregularities that could not be explained by standard banking practices." I stared at him, and it was like a lightning bolt. A sickening realization hit me. "They're covering it up," I whispered. Trent's expression hardened instantly. "That is a serious accusation. I would strongly advise against making such statements without irrefutable proof." "I provided proof," I said, my voice rising a little. "You provided a misinterpretation based on incomplete understanding," Trent countered. "I suggest you focus on your actual duties and put this matter behind you. The case is closed." As I left his office, a cold, heavy feeling of betrayal settled in my chest. Something was terribly wrong, and it was becoming painfully clear that the system I had trusted would not protect me after all. The dismissal of my evidence left me stunned, but it didn't deter me. If anything, it solidified my conviction that I'd stumbled onto something even bigger. If senior executives were willing to bury an investigation, the fraud had to extend beyond just Jackson. I started gathering more evidence, this time being incredibly careful to create secure backups outside the company system. I'd work late when fewer people were around, taking screenshots, meticulously documenting everything. My apartment slowly transformed into an amateur investigation headquarters, sticky notes connecting related transactions, printouts covering my dining table. The atmosphere at work grew increasingly hostile. Colleagues who'd once been friendly now avoided eye contact. Twice, I walked into the break room only for conversations to abruptly halt. In team meetings, my suggestions were consistently overlooked, dismissed. And Jackson himself? He started taking notice of me in ways that felt deliberately intimidating. He'd just appear behind me unexpectedly, asking pointed questions about what I was working on. During a company-wide presentation, he actually singled me out. "Maynard, you seem to have concerns about our international transaction protocols. Perhaps you could share your expertise with the group?" All eyes turned to me, and I felt the trap closing. If I spoke up, I'd expose myself further. If I stayed silent, I'd look incompetent. I was just trying to understand the documentation requirements better. I replied carefully. "I appreciate the clarification provided by the compliance team." Jackson smiled, but his eyes were ice cold. "Always happy to help our more junior staff navigate complex matters." The condescension was clear, as was the message, "Know your place." The problems extended beyond work. I started getting hang-up calls at home at odd hours. Anonymous emails landed in my personal inbox, vague but unmistakably threatening. Some questions are dangerous to ask, and loyal employees sleep better at night. I confided in my longtime friend, Drew Kaplan, who worked in cybersecurity downtown. We'd been friends since college, and I trusted him implicitly. We met at a coffee shop, several blocks from our workplaces. "This sounds serious, Maynard," Drew said, listening intently. "If these people are as connected as you suspect, they could have significant resources to make your life difficult." "Am I being paranoid?" I asked, really wondering if I was seeing conspiracies where none existed. Drew shook his head firmly. "Financial fraud at this level is always protected by powerful people. Your concerns are legitimate. Let me at least help you secure your digital footprint." Over the next week, Drew set me up with encrypted email, two-factor authentication on everything, and taught me basic counter-surveillance techniques. It felt surreal, like something from a thriller movie, not my previously ordinary life. My girlfriend, Sarah, who I'd been dating for 8 months, was less supportive. She became increasingly frustrated with my preoccupation. "You talk about nothing else anymore," she complained one evening. "Every conversation somehow circles back to Jackson and conspiracy theories." "They're not theories," I insisted. "I've seen the evidence with my own eyes." "Then take it to the FBI or whoever handles bank fraud," she said. "But this obsession is changing you. You're suspicious of everything, jumping at shadows." "I'm being cautious because there's legitimate reason for concern." Sarah gathered her things, shaking her head. "I care about you, Maynard, but I can't be with someone who sees enemies around every corner. Call me when you've sorted this out and decided to rejoin the real world." The door closed behind her with quiet finality. Another relationship, a casualty of my decision to speak up. Even my sister, Abby, started distancing herself. When we met for our weekly dinner, she was uncomfortable, distracted. "People at work are talking," she admitted reluctantly. "They say you've been making accusations against senior management, that you're creating problems because you were passed over for promotion." "That's ridiculous," I said. "I never wanted Jackson's position." "I know, but perception matters. Some people are suggesting you might be having some kind of breakdown." She reached across the table, touching my hand. "Mom and Dad are worried, too. They asked me if you might benefit from talking to someone professional." The suggestion that I needed psychiatric help, rather than being taken seriously, stung me deeply. "Have you told them what I found? The actual evidence?" Abby withdrew her hand. "I tried, but it sounds complicated and honestly, a bit far-fetched when explained to someone outside the industry." "So instead, you've all decided I'm having a mental health crisis?" "No one is saying that exactly," she backpedaled. "Just that stress can make people see patterns that might not exist." I felt increasingly isolated, my circle of trust shrinking to essentially just Drew. Even my parents were viewing me with concern rather than support. The final confirmation that my concerns were justified came 3 weeks after my meeting with Trent. I returned home from work to find my apartment door slightly ajar. My heart rate spiked. Cautiously, I entered to find my living space methodically searched. Drawers were open, books displaced, furniture slightly repositioned. Nothing of obvious value had been taken. My TV, laptop, watch were all still there. But my work notes were missing from my desk, and the backup hard drive I'd hidden in a hollowed-out book was gone. This was no random burglary. This was a targeted message. They knew where I lived. They could enter at will. They were watching my every move. The break-in left me deeply shaken. I called the police immediately, but the responding officers seemed utterly unimpressed. "No forced entry. Valuable electronics left behind," noted the older officer, Brennan, as he half-heartedly filled out a report. "You sure you didn't just leave the door unlocked? Maybe misplaced the missing items?" "I am positive," I insisted. "Someone searched my apartment specifically for those files." Officer Brennan exchanged a skeptical glance with his younger partner. "And these files contained evidence of some banking conspiracy?" The way he said conspiracy made it clear he'd already categorized me as a paranoid nut. "Financial fraud," I corrected. "Documented evidence of money laundering through Western Regional Bank." "Right," Officer Brennan said, closing his notebook. "Well, we'll file the report. Maybe check with neighbors. Keep your doors locked in the future." Their dismissive attitude only reinforced my growing sense that I was utterly on my own. As soon as they left, I called Drew. "You can't stay there," he said immediately. "If they've been in your apartment once, they'll come back." "Where am I supposed to go?" "A hotel." "For now, yes. Use cash, not your credit card. I'll come over tonight and help you set up security cameras in case they return." That evening, Drew installed discrete wireless cameras throughout my apartment, connected to an app on my phone that would alert me to any movement. It was a small comfort, but at least I'd have evidence next time. I spent 3 nights in a budget hotel across town before cautiously returning. Nothing seemed disturbed, and the cameras had detected no intruders. Maybe the message had been delivered, and they now believed I had been sufficiently intimidated. Then the first explicit death threat arrived. A text message from an unknown number. "We know you take the 7:15 bus every morning. The red scarf you wore today makes you easy to spot. Stop digging or..." Stop breathing. I had indeed worn a red scarf that morning. Someone was following me, watching my routine. My hands trembled as I showed the message to Drew over lunch. This crosses a line, he said grimly. This is no longer just workplace intimidation. You need to take this to the police again. They barely took the break-in seriously. Then we find someone who will listen. This is a clear death threat. We went to the police station that afternoon with the text message and evidence from my security cameras, which had captured footage of my emptied drawers and displaced furniture when I returned home. This time, we were directed to a detective named Officer Patterson, a steady woman in her 40s with short gray hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. Walk me through everything from the beginning, she said, taking detailed notes as I explained the fraud, the dismissal, the escalating hostility, the break-in, and now the death threat. Unlike the patrol officers, Patterson asked thoughtful questions and seemed to take the situation seriously. Financial crime and violence often go hand in hand, she said when I finished. People protecting millions of dollars rarely limit themselves to legal methods of problem solving. So you believe me? I asked, unable to hide my raw relief. I believe you have provided evidence of credible threats, she replied carefully. The text message alone is enough to open an investigation. The timing of the apartment search following your whistleblowing attempts establishes a pattern. For the first time in weeks, I felt someone in authority was actually listening. What should I do now? I asked. First, we document everything and open an official case. Second, you take precautions, vary your routines, stay with friends if possible, remain aware of your surroundings. I nodded, already mentally cataloging changes I could make. Officer Patterson handed me her card. Call me directly if anything else happens, no matter how small it seems. 2 days later, my security app alerted me to movement near my car in the underground garage of my apartment building at 3 a.m. The footage showed a hooded figure crouching near my front tire. I immediately called Officer Patterson. By the time police arrived, the person was gone, but inspection of my car revealed clear evidence of brake line tampering. If I had driven to work that morning, I likely would have lost brake function while descending the steep hill on my regular route. This is attempted murder, Officer Patterson stated flatly. We are beyond threats now. She arranged for forensic examination of my vehicle and increased patrols near my apartment, but we both knew these measures were insufficient against determined attackers. I have a suggestion, she said. We have a temporary safe housing program for witnesses and victims in active threat situations. It's not witness protection, but it would give you a secure location while we investigate and build a case. You mean leave my apartment? For how long? Until we can identify and apprehend whoever is behind these threats. Could be days, could be weeks. The thought of abandoning my home felt like another victory for Jackson and his allies, but the alternative was potentially fatal. I agreed to the safe housing arrangement. Before relocating, I had dinner with my family, desperate for support in this increasingly dangerous situation. We met at my parents' house, with Abby joining us. I hadn't told them about the brake tampering yet, but I needed to explain why I'd be unreachable at a secure location. The dinner began pleasantly enough, with my mother's familiar pot roast and my father's stories about his golf game. When the meal was winding down, I broached the subject. I need to tell you all something important, I began. The situation at work has escalated significantly. I explained the threats, the break-in, and finally, the brake tampering, watching their expressions shift from polite interest to concern, and in Abby's case, unmistakable skepticism. The police are taking this very seriously, I concluded. Officer Patterson has arranged safe housing for me until they can apprehend the people responsible. My mother reached for my hand. This sounds terrifying, honey. Are you sure you wouldn't be safer just quitting your job and moving out of state for a while? Running away wouldn't solve anything, Mom. These people need to be held accountable. My father, always practical, asked, have you spoken with a lawyer? You might have grounds for a whistleblower protection case. I have a consultation scheduled next week, I confirmed. Officer Patterson put me in touch with someone who specializes in financial crime cases. Throughout this, Abby had remained unusually quiet. Finally, she spoke up. Does anyone else think this all sounds a bit extreme? I mean, brake tampering? Secret safe houses? This is Denver, not a mafia movie. I have police reports, Abby. Evidence. This is happening. She rolled her eyes. Or maybe you've convinced yourself it's happening because you can't admit you might have been wrong about Jackson. People at work are saying you've been under a lot of stress lately. People at work are getting their information from the very executives I accused of fraud. I responded, trying to keep my voice level. Of course they're going to discredit me. Or maybe, just maybe, you really did misinterpret some complicated international banking transactions, Abby countered. And now you've created this elaborate danger narrative to avoid admitting you made a mistake. My father raised his hands placatingly. Let's all take a breath here. Maynard, regardless of who is right about the fraud allegations, if the police believe the threats are credible, you should follow their safety recommendations. I agree, my mother said quickly. Better safe than sorry. Abby shook her head, pushing away from the table. Fine. Go hide in your secret bunker if that makes you feel better. But don't be surprised if this whole situation is resolved by you getting some rest and perspective. Her dismissal hurt more than she could ever know. As I drove home that night, carefully testing my newly repaired brakes at each stop, I felt the crushing weight of isolation pressing down on me. Even my own sister thought I was manufacturing drama. As I approached a steep hill on my route home, I pressed the brake pedal and felt immediate resistance. For a split second, I was flooded with relief that the repairs had been successful. Then, suddenly, the pedal went completely to the floor. No resistance. Nothing. My heart slammed against my ribs. The car began accelerating down the hill, headlights illuminating the sharp curve ahead. I desperately pumped the useless pedal. In a flash of terrifying clarity, amidst the panic, I remembered my driving instructor's advice from years ago about brake failure. I downshifted rapidly, the engine screaming in protest, and yanked the emergency brake, steering toward a side railing designed to slow runaway vehicles. The car shuddered violently, metal scraping against metal with a horrific sound, but it gradually lost momentum until it finally stopped, mere feet from the curve that would have sent me plummeting down a 30-foot drop. Shaking uncontrollably, I called Officer Patterson. As I waited for police and a tow truck, one thought repeated in my mind. This was no longer about whistleblowing or corporate fraud. Someone wanted me dead, and they had nearly succeeded. Officer Patterson personally escorted me to the safe house the following day. It was a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a secure building in a quiet neighborhood across town, its address known only to a handful of trusted officers. The unit has reinforced doors, security cameras, and an alarm system connected directly to our dispatch, she explained as we entered. The building requires key card access, and the front desk is staffed 24 hours. I surveyed what would be my home for the foreseeable future. Basic furnishings, neutral colors. Impersonal, but functional. How long do you think I'll need to stay here? I asked. Patterson set my bag down. That depends on how quickly we can build a case. With your brake line being tampered with twice, we have clear evidence of attempted murder. But connecting it to specific individuals will take time. And if you can't make that connection? Her expression was sympathetic but direct. Then we need to discuss longer-term options for your safety. But let's focus on the immediate steps first. Those steps included a meeting with Assistant District Attorney Marquez, a sharp-eyed woman who specialized in financial crimes. She arrived at the safe house the next morning with Officer Patterson. Officer Patterson has briefed me on the threats against you, ADA Marquez began. Now I need to understand the underlying fraud that precipitated these threats. For the next 3 hours, I walked her through everything. The suspicious transactions, the altered documentation, the improbable fund movements, the dismissal of my internal report. Unfortunately, most of my evidence was on the hard drive that was stolen during the break-in, I concluded. But you said your friend Drew helped you set up secure backups? Officer Patterson prompted. Yes, we have cloud backups of some key documents. Not everything, but enough to establish the pattern. ADA Marquez nodded. I will need access to all of that. Also, any names of potential witnesses who might have seen similar irregularities but remained quiet. I can think of 2 people in the compliance department who seemed uncomfortable during certain transaction approvals, I offered. They never said anything explicitly, but their body language suggested concern. Good. We will approach them discreetly. She gathered her notes. Mr. Weber, building a case like this takes time. Financial fraud is deliberately complex to obscure criminal activity. The fact that they have resorted to physical threats suggests you found something significant. After they left, I felt simultaneously encouraged and overwhelmed. The justice system was finally taking my claims seriously, but I was effectively a prisoner in this safe house, cut off from my normal life indefinitely. Drew visited that evening, bringing additional clothes, groceries, and a secure laptop. His familiar presence was grounding amid the chaos. "How are you holding up?" he asked as we ordered takeout. "Physically safe, mentally exhausted," I replied honestly. "I keep replaying everything, wondering if there was a point where I could have prevented this escalation." "This is not on you," Drew said firmly. "You did what any ethical person would do by reporting fraud. The criminals are the ones who chose to threaten you rather than face consequences." Drew helped me compile a comprehensive file of all the evidence we still had access to, organizing it meticulously for ADA Marquez. The work kept my mind occupied, giving me purpose within the confines of my temporary prison. Officer Patterson had made it clear that absolute secrecy about my location was essential. I couldn't tell anyone where I was staying, not even family. I was permitted to maintain phone contact, but had to be vague. After a week in isolation, I reached out to Abby, hoping to repair our relationship. Despite her skepticism, she was still my sister, and this arrangement felt like another thing the conspirators had taken from me. "Maynard, finally," she answered. "Mom and Dad have been worried sick. You basically disappeared after that dinner. I told you all I would be staying somewhere secure for a while." "Yes, in your secret bunker," she said, and I could practically hear her eyes rolling. "Very dramatic. The police don't consider death threats and break tampering dramatic, Abby. They consider them serious crimes." She sighed. "Look, I'm not saying nothing happened. Maybe someone did mess with your car, but connecting it to Jackson and some banking conspiracy seems like a stretch. The timing is hardly coincidental. Or maybe you've made other enemies. You've been acting pretty paranoid lately, according to everyone at work." The conversation continued in this frustrating circle, with Abby acknowledging the threats but refusing to connect them to my whistleblowing. "Where are you staying anyway?" she asked eventually. "Mom wanted to bring you some home-cooked meals." "I can't disclose my location. That's the whole point of a safe house." "Oh my God, Maynard, this is getting ridiculous. You're hiding from imaginary hitmen while a police investigation drags on with no arrests. Doesn't that tell you something?" "It tells me these people are well-connected and careful," I replied, my patience wearing thin. "Or it tells you that your banking conspiracy theory is just that, a theory. Meanwhile, you're destroying your career and worrying our parents because you can't admit you might have been wrong." The conversation ended badly, with both of us frustrated and no closer to understanding each other. I stared at my phone for a long time afterward, feeling the gulf between us widening beyond repair. 2 days later, Drew called with disturbing news. "I think you should know something," he said, his voice unusually serious. "I just saw Abby having lunch with Jackson Harmon at Lamont." My stomach dropped like a stone. "Are you sure?" "Positive. I was meeting a client nearby and saw them through the window. They seemed very comfortable together, laughing, leaning in close." "Maybe it was a marketing meeting," I suggested, though I didn't believe it myself. Lamont was an expensive French restaurant, not a typical venue for work discussions. "Maybe," Drew said, unconvinced. "But I thought you should know." The revelation felt like a physical blow. Was my own sister actually collaborating with the man who was trying to have me killed? I texted Abby immediately, "Interesting lunch date today. Since when are you and Jackson Harmon so close?" Her response came 30 minutes later. "Are you having me followed now?" It was a business lunch. Marketing works closely with executives at Lamont. Jackson was discussing potential opportunities for me. Some of us are still focused on our careers instead of imaginary conspiracies. The implication was clear. While I was allegedly destroying my career with false accusations, Abby was positioning herself to benefit from my downfall. "Did you tell him about my allegations?" I asked directly. "He already knows, Maynard. Everyone knows. And for what it's worth, he seems genuinely confused by your hostility. Says you were always a valued team member." I almost laughed at the absurdity. A valued team member whose breaks he had cut twice. There you go again. Connecting dots that are not related. "Jackson actually suggested you might be under extreme stress and offered company resources for mental health support." "How thoughtful of him," I replied bitterly. "Did he happen to ask where I am staying these days?" There was a longer pause before her. Next message. "He did mention the company is concerned about your well-being." I told him, "You are being ridiculously secretive about your location because you think you are in some thriller movie." Cold dread washed over me. Please tell me you did not give him any hints about where I might be. I don't know where you are. That's the whole point. This secrecy is absurd and hurting our family. Mom cries every night worrying about you. I set the phone down, my hands shaking with anger and fear. Abby might not have given away my exact location, but her lunch with Jackson confirmed my worst suspicions. The enemy now had a direct line to my sister, who clearly did not take the danger seriously. Little did I know that misguided lunch was just the beginning of a betrayal that would nearly cost me my life. The knowledge that Abby was meeting with Jackson gnawed at me. I tried to focus on working with Ada Marquez, who was making progress connecting the suspicious transactions to known criminal organizations. The case was building, albeit slowly. Each day brought new pieces to the puzzle, but Jackson and his associates remained seemingly untouchable. 2 days after learning about the lunch, I decided to confront Abby directly. This time, I called rather than texted, wanting to hear her voice to gauge her reactions. "We need to talk about Jackson," I said when she answered. "Not this again, Maynard." "Yes, this again. He is dangerous, Abby. The people he works with are dangerous." "I've known him for years," she countered. "He has always been professional and supportive. To your face, while ordering others to tamper with my breaks behind the scenes. You have zero proof he was involved with that. The timing is circumstantial at best," she interrupted. "Do you hear yourself? You sound completely paranoid." I took a deep breath, trying a different approach. "What did you two discuss at lunch?" "My career mainly. There's an opening for a senior marketing position and he thinks I should apply. And that doesn't strike you as suspicious? Him courting you right when I'm building a case against him?" Abby's voice hardened. "Not everything is about you, Maynard. Some of us are actually good at our jobs and get recognized for it." The implication stung. I was good at my job, too. That's how I found the fraud in the first place. Or you found complex international transactions you didn't understand and jumped to conclusions. We were talking in circles again. I tried one last time to make her see reason. "Abby, please, just be careful around him. If you won't believe me about the fraud, at least accept that someone tried to kill me twice. The police have the evidence. If someone really tried to kill you, why has no one been arrested? Because these people are careful and well-connected." She sighed heavily. "Look, I'm trying to be supportive, but this has gone on for weeks now. You hiding in some undisclosed location, making accusations against respected executives, seeing assassins around every corner. It's exhausting, and frankly, it's embarrassing for the family." "Embarrassing?" I repeated, incredulous. "I'm trying to stay alive." "From what?" "These shadowy financial criminals who somehow can tamper with your breaks, but can't find you in your super-secret safe house." "Yes, exactly that. The only reason they haven't found me is because no one knows where I'm staying. Which brings me back to my point. If you are really in danger, why have the police not made arrests? Why are you still hiding after weeks of investigation? Maybe, just maybe, the threat is not as serious as you believe." We ended the call with nothing resolved. I felt more isolated than ever. My own sister essentially accusing me of manufacturing the entire situation. Later that afternoon, I received another notification from my security system at my actual apartment. Someone had tried to access my laptop again. The camera footage showed a professional-looking woman I didn't recognize methodically searching my space. This was not a random burglar. This was someone specifically looking for information. I forwarded the footage to Officer Patterson, who promised to send officers immediately. 2 hours later, she called back. The subject was gone by the time officers arrived, but we got clear footage of her face. We're running it through recognition software now. Any idea what she was looking for? Your laptop was accessed briefly. We'll need to examine it for signs of tampering or data theft. More concerning is that someone knew you might still have evidence there. The implication hung heavy in the air. Someone had informed the searcher that I might have left important information at my apartment. That evening, I received another alert, this time from a security app Drew had installed that monitored online searches for my name. Someone had run a search for Maynard Weber current address, followed by Maynard Weber's safe house location, Denver police. A chill ran through me. Someone was actively trying to locate me. Minutes later, my phone buzzed with a social media notification. Abby had tagged me in a public post. With growing horror, I opened the app to read, concerned about my brother Maynard, who has been hiding in a safe house for weeks because he thinks financial executives are trying to kill him. If anyone has seen him in the Riverside Heights area near the police substation, Please let our family know he is okay. We are worried about his mental state. My hands began to shake. Riverside Heights was indeed the neighborhood where my safe house was located, and there was a police substation 2 blocks away. Abby had just publicly narrowed down my location to an area of a few square miles. Anyone looking for me would now have a specific search zone. I immediately called Abby, my heart pounding. "Are you out of your mind?" I demanded when she answered. "Why would you post my location online?" "I didn't post your exact location," she replied defensively. "Just the general area, and only because Mom and Dad are worried sick. You just told potentially dangerous people exactly where to look for me. Take it down now." "This is exactly what I mean about your paranoia," she said. "No one is hunting you down, Maynard. This fantasy you've created, it is not a fantasy. Take down the post immediately." "Fine," she said after a moment. "But only because you're so upset. This is getting ridiculous." I called Officer Patterson next, my voice tight with panic. "My sister just posted information about my safe house location on social media. The post named Riverside Heights specifically." Patterson's response was immediate. "Stay where you are. Lock all doors. Do not approach windows. I am sending officers now." I moved away from the windows as instructed, turning off all lights and sitting in darkness in the hallway between rooms. My phone buzzed again, Abby calling back, but I ignored it. The damage was already done. 20 minutes later, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. "Mr. Weber, this is Officer Daniels with Denver PD. I am outside your building with my partner. We received an anonymous tip about suspicious activity near your apartment." "Did Officer Patterson send you?" I asked, my throat dry. "No, sir. This came through dispatch. A concerned citizen reported a man lurking near the entrance to your building, possibly armed." My blood ran cold. "Do not approach my unit. Call Officer Patterson." Immediately, I hung up and called Patterson myself, relaying the conversation. "Stay exactly where you are," she ordered. "Those are not my officers. I have a team en route. ETA 3 minutes. The building security has been alerted." The next 15 minutes were the longest of my life. I sat in the dark hallway, phone clutched in my hand, listening for any sound at the door. Eventually, my phone rang again. "Maynard, it's Patterson. We are securing the building now. Are you still safe?" "Yes," I whispered. "No one has tried to enter." "Good. Stay put until I personally knock on your door." 10 minutes later, a firm knock came. "Maynard, it's Patterson." The code phrase is Bluebird Sunrise. We had established this verification method when I first moved to the safe house. I opened the door to find Patterson and 2 uniformed officers. "We apprehended a suspect in the parking garage," she said without preamble. "Male, armed with a hunting knife, wearing a maintenance uniform he is not authorized to have. He matches the description of Lloyd Carson, a known associate of several individuals connected to your case." My legs nearly gave out. Patterson guided me to a chair. "How did he find me?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "We are investigating that. Your sister's social media post has been removed, but obviously the damage was done. We will need to move you immediately to a new location." As I quickly gathered essentials, my phone rang again. "Abby, not now," I said to Patterson, showing her the screen. "Actually, you should answer. On speaker. We need to know if she has been contacted by anyone." I accepted the call, putting it on speaker. "Abby? Maynard? Thank God," she sobbed, her voice breaking. "The police just called me. They said they caught someone trying to break into your apartment with a knife." I didn't believe. I never thought. "It's true," I said, my voice flat. "They found him in the parking garage. He was wearing a fake maintenance uniform to gain access to the building." "I'm so sorry," she cried. "I thought you were being paranoid. I never would have posted anything if I truly believed you were in danger. Did anyone contact you after you made that post?" Patterson interjected. "Who is that?" Abby asked. "Officer Patterson, Denver PD. Did anyone reach out to you after you posted your brother's general location?" There was a pause. I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. They said they were an old college friend of Maynard's who lived in Riverside Heights and wanted to check on him. "Did you respond?" Patterson pressed. "Yes," Abby admitted, her voice small. "I told them Maynard was staying near the police substation on Maple Street. They seemed so concerned, said they wanted to drop off some food for him." Patterson and I exchanged grim looks. "Miss Weber, we will need you to come to the station immediately to make a formal statement." Do not speak to anyone else about this matter. After ending the call, Patterson turned to me. We need to move fast. The secondary safe house is prepared. My officers will create a diversion while we escort you out through the service entrance. As I gathered my belongings, the reality of what had just happened sank in. My own sister's disbelief had nearly gotten me killed. The people after me now had confirmation that I was being protected by police, and they were bold enough to attempt an attack despite the proximity of a police station. This was no longer about whistleblowing or professional consequences. This was life or death, and despite all my precautions, I had come within minutes of facing my would-be killer, armed only with the darkness and a cell phone. The new safe house was a converted industrial loft in a secured building downtown, far from Riverside Heights. As an additional precaution, Officer Patterson arranged for a decoy location to be established with police surveillance to catch anyone else who might come looking for me. The suspect we apprehended is Lloyd Carson, Patterson informed me the next morning. He has a record of assault and is known to provide services to certain financial entities looking to solve problems outside official channels. A hitman, I translated. Essentially, though not very sophisticated. During initial questioning, he claimed he was hired through an intermediary and never met his employer directly. Convenient, indeed, but we are applying pressure. His attorney is already floating the possibility of a deal in exchange for information. The following days were a blur of interviews, evidence reviews, and legal consultations. ADA Marquez was building a solid case against Jackson and several associates based on the financial records Drew and I had managed to preserve. The attempted attack had actually accelerated the investigation, bringing additional resources and attention from higher authorities. The FBI has officially joined the investigation, Marquez announced during one of our meetings. Financial crimes of this magnitude across state lines fall under their jurisdiction. This gives us access to additional resources and expertise. For the first time, I felt hope that justice might actually be served. The very real attempt on my life had transformed a complex financial investigation into a priority case with attempted murder charges on the table. Abby had been devastated by her role in the attack. According to Patterson, she had spent hours at the police station, providing every detail of her interactions with Jackson and the mysterious texter who had extracted my location from her. 5 days after the attack, I finally agreed to speak with her by phone. I don't even know what to say, she began, her voice raw from crying. Sorry seems completely inadequate. Why didn't you believe me, Abby? I asked, the pain sharp in my voice. After everything I told you, the evidence, the police involvement, why did you trust Jackson instead? She was quiet for a moment. He was so convincing. He seemed genuinely concerned about you. Talked about how stress can cause people to see conspiracies where none exist. And I guess part of me didn't want to believe something so terrible could be happening. That terrible thing almost got me killed. I know, she whispered. I'll never forgive myself for that. Did Jackson ask you directly about my whereabouts? Another pause. Not directly. He mentioned that the company was worried about your well-being. Wondered if you were somewhere safe. I said you were being secretive, but that I thought you were under police protection somewhere. And after that, he suggested the senior marketing position. Yes, she admitted, the realization apparently dawning on her for the first time. He brought it up right after that conversation. We spoke for nearly an hour, Abby filling in pieces I hadn't known. According to her, Jackson had been cultivating her as an information source for weeks, starting with casual lunch invitations, gradually steering conversations toward my concerning behavior and unfounded accusations. I feel so stupid, she said. He played me perfectly. He's good at manipulation. That's how he's gotten away with fraud for years. The conversation was difficult but necessary. By the end, some of the raw hurt had begun to heal. Abby promised to cooperate fully with the investigation, offering to testify about Jackson's attempts to use her to locate me. 2 days later, Lloyd Carson accepted a plea deal in exchange for information about his employers. He confirmed that he had been hired through an intermediary connected to Jackson, with instructions to scare me into silence. The knife, he claimed, was only meant as intimidation, though neither Patterson nor I believed that explanation. With Carson's testimony and the financial evidence, the case against Jackson was strengthening daily. ADA Marquez obtained warrants to access Jackson's personal financial records, revealing payments to Carson's intermediary that coincided with the brake tampering incidents and the attack at the safe house. The FBI's involvement brought additional pressure. Agents interviewed other bank employees, finding two who corroborated aspects of my allegations after being granted immunity. The conspiracy was unraveling, with Jackson at its center. 10 days after the safe house incident, I was escorted to the courthouse to provide formal testimony before a grand jury. The building was secure, with officers stationed throughout, but I still felt exposed. As I waited in a private room, the door opened to reveal Ada Marquez. "There has been a significant development," she said, closing the door behind her. "The FBI just arrested Jackson and 3 associates at Western Regional. They are being brought in as we speak." A wave of profound relief washed over me. "On what charges?" "Money laundering, conspiracy, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. Your testimony today will help ensure the indictments stick." When I entered the grand jury room, I felt a strange calm. For months, I had been fighting to be heard, to have the truth acknowledged. Now, 23 citizens would hear that truth directly from me. I spoke for nearly 3 hours, methodically explaining the fraud, the dismissal of my internal report, the escalating threats, and ultimately, the attack at the safe house. The jurors listened intently, many taking notes, their expressions shifting from skepticism to palpable shock as the story unfolded. By the time I finished, there was a palpable sense of outrage in the room. The forewoman asked several pointed questions that suggested they were already leaning toward indictment. That evening, back at the safe house, Officer Patterson arrived with news. The grand jury returned indictments against Jackson and 6 others, including your former supervisor, Trent Wilson. FBI agents are executing search warrants at their homes and offices as we speak. I sat down heavily, the weight of the past months suddenly hitting me full force. Is it really over? The immediate danger? Yes. The legal process is just beginning, but these people will be occupied with their own defense now, not with silencing you. For the first time in months, I slept without fear, without checking the locks repeatedly, without listening for sounds of intrusion. The following day brought the most shocking revelation yet. During Jackson's arraignment hearing, evidence was presented showing that Abby had not just been an unwitting source of information. Text messages between Jackson and his associates revealed that he had been grooming her specifically because of her connection to me. He had identified her as a potential weakness in my support system and deliberately cultivated her trust over several months before I even discovered the fraud. When presented with this evidence, Abby was utterly devastated. She came to the safe house that evening, escorted by Patterson, her eyes red from crying. "I had no idea," she said as we sat in the sparse living room. "He started paying attention to my marketing ideas months ago. I thought he genuinely saw potential in me." "He saw potential in using you," I corrected, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "I know that now." She looked up, her expression raw with guilt. "The FBI showed me text messages where he specifically discussed using me to get information about you. He called me the useful idiot sister in one of them." Despite my anger over her actions, seeing her so thoroughly manipulated and discarded stirred my protective instincts. "You weren't the only one he fooled, Abby. Half the bank thought he was brilliant and charming, but none of them nearly got their brother killed because of it." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything between us. "I don't know how to make this right," she finally said. "I betrayed you in the worst possible way. You can start by testifying. Tell the truth about everything Jackson did. How he manipulated you, what he asked about me." She nodded firmly. "I will. I promise." As she left that evening, escorted back to her apartment where she now had police protection as a witness, I felt the first tentative steps toward forgiveness. Abby had made terrible mistakes, but Jackson had deliberately exploited her trust and family loyalty. The true villain remained clear. The next morning, news broke of the arrests. Western Regional Bank stock plummeted as details of the money laundering operation became public. Reporters camped outside the bank headquarters, and financial analysts speculated about whether the institution would survive the scandal. Officer Patterson arrived with FBI agent Calloway to update me on the investigation. "We found evidence that the money laundering operation was even larger than you initially discovered," Agent Calloway explained. "Over 5 years, nearly $500 million moved through the accounts you identified, connected to organized crime groups in 3 countries. What happens now? I asked. The case will proceed to trial unless they accept plea deals. Given the strength of the evidence, including your testimony and the attempted murder, prosecutors are in a strong position. And what about me? How much longer do I need to stay in protective custody? Patterson and Calloway exchanged glances. The immediate threat has been contained, Patterson said. Jackson and his closest associates are in custody with no bail. However, given the scope of this operation, there may be others connected to it who have not yet been identified. So I'm still not safe? You are safer, Calloway clarified. We would recommend continued caution for the next few months as the case proceeds. But you can begin transitioning back to normal life with appropriate security measures. The prospect of returning to normal life after months of fear and isolation was both exhilarating and terrifying. What would normal even look like now? 6 months later, I sat in the federal courthouse as the judge delivered sentences for Jackson Harmon and his co-conspirators. After weeks of damning testimony, including my own detailed account and Abby's emotional description of how she had been manipulated, the jury had found them guilty on all counts. Jackson received 25 years for fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. Trent Wilson and 4 others received sentences ranging from 10 to 15 years. The intermediary who had hired Lloyd Carson to attack me at the safe house received 12 years. As Jackson was led away in handcuffs, he glanced in my direction with cold hatred. I met his gaze steadily, refusing to be intimidated any longer. His power was gone. His carefully constructed facade of respectability shattered beyond repair. Outside the courthouse, I stood with Abby, our parents, Drew, and Officer Patterson as reporters shouted questions. Mr. Weber, how does it feel to be vindicated after all this time? Are you planning to return to banking? Will you be filing a civil suit against Western Regional? I raised a hand for quiet. Justice has been served today. The people who committed financial crimes and then tried to silence me will face the consequences of their actions. That is all I have ever wanted. Thank you. As we walked away from the media scrum, my father squeezed my shoulder. I've never been prouder, son. Your courage through all this has been remarkable. My mother wiped tears from her eyes. I just thank God you're safe. When we think how close we came to losing you. The family healing had been a gradual process. After the arrests, my parents had been horrified to learn the full extent of the danger I had faced and deeply remorseful for doubting my claims. Family therapy sessions had helped us process the trauma and rebuild trust, though certain conversations still carried echoes of past pain. Abby had struggled the most with guilt. Her unwitting role in endangering my life weighed heavily on her. Despite my assurances that I had forgiven her, she had taken a leave of absence from Western Regional immediately after Jackson's arrest, eventually resigning to accept a position with a nonprofit organization focused on corporate ethics. The sentencing helps, she said as we had lunch after the hearing. Knowing they can't hurt you anymore, that they're paying for what they did. It helps me too, I admitted, though I still check my rearview mirror more than I should. Drew raised his glass. To Maynard, the most stubborn whistleblower in Denver. When everyone else doubted him, he stuck to the truth and nearly got himself killed in the process. I did, I added with a wry smile. But you did the right thing, my father insisted. That matters. It did matter. Despite everything, I had no regrets about coming forward. The fraud I had exposed had been funneling money for drug cartels and human trafficking operations. Lives had likely been saved by disrupting those financial channels. My own life had changed dramatically. After the arrests, I had received the official whistleblower award amounting to $6 million, a percentage of the funds recovered. More importantly, I had been approached by the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, a bureau of the Treasury Department, with a job offer. We need people with your integrity and attention to detail, the recruiter had said. And frankly, your first-hand experience with retaliation makes you uniquely qualified to support other whistleblowers. I had accepted, finding unexpected fulfillment in helping others navigate the dangerous waters of financial crime reporting. My experience had made me a more effective advocate, able to prepare whistleblowers for both the professional and personal challenges they might face. Western Regional Bank had not survived the scandal. After the arrests, investigations revealed that the fraud extended far beyond Jackson's immediate circle. The bank had been acquired by a larger institution at a fraction of its former value, with most employees transferred to the new entity after rigorous vetting. As part of the transition, the new bank had implemented comprehensive whistleblower protection protocols and ethical compliance measures, directly addressing the failures that had allowed Jackson's scheme to flourish. I had been consulted on these measures, finding a certain poetic justice in helping to rebuild what had nearly destroyed me. My personal life had slowly healed as well. The friendships that had weathered the crisis had deepened, while superficial relationships had fallen away. Drew remained my closest friend, his unwavering support throughout the ordeal a reminder of what true friendship meant. Romantically, I had recently begun dating Jessica, a lawyer I met through my work with FinCEN. She understood the world I had navigated and respected the principles that had guided my choices. Unlike Sarah, who had walked away when things became difficult, Jessica valued the integrity that had driven me to risk everything for the truth. 6 weeks after the sentencing, we held a family dinner at my parents' house. As we gathered around the table, I looked at the faces of those who had stood by me through the darkest moments, and those who had found their way back after painful lessons. "I want to propose a toast," I said, raising my glass. "To truth, to justice, and to the courage to stand for both, even when it is difficult. Especially when it is difficult." "To courage," they echoed. Later that evening, as Abby helped clear the dishes, she paused beside me. "I was thinking about something today," she said quietly. "When all this started, I couldn't understand why you would risk everything over some banking irregularities. It seems so abstract compared to your safety, your career. And now I understand that principles only matter when they cost you something to uphold them. Anyone can claim integrity when nothing is at stake." I nodded, recognizing the hard-earned wisdom in her words. The strangest part is that I never set out to be a whistleblower or some kind of moral crusader. I just couldn't look away once I saw what was happening. "That's what real courage is," she replied. "Not fearlessness, but doing what is right despite the fear." In the months that followed, I was invited to speak at conferences and ethics panels about my experience. Though public speaking had never been my strength, I found purpose in sharing the lessons I had learned about corporate accountability, whistleblower protection, and the personal cost of standing for truth. At one such event, a young financial analyst approached me after my presentation, clearly nervous. "I think I may have found something similar at my company," he confided. "But after hearing your story, I'm terrified of what might happen if I speak up." I recognized the fear in his eyes, the same fear that had kept me awake through countless nights. "The system is imperfect," I told him honestly. "But there are resources and protections that weren't available when I went through this. And now there are people like me who can help guide you through the process." I gave him my card, promising to connect him with the right authorities and support networks. As he walked away, looking slightly less burdened, I realized that my ordeal had created ripples I could never have anticipated, potentially preventing future frauds and protecting other whistleblowers from the isolation I had experienced. 1 year after the safe house incident, I organized a small gathering to mark the anniversary. Drew, Jessica, my parents, Abby, and Officer Patterson, now a close friend, joined me at my new home, a secure condominium in a different part of Denver. As we enjoyed dinner on the terrace, Patterson raised her glass. "To survival, justice, and new beginnings." "And to family," I added, meeting Abby's eyes across the table. "Both the ones we are born into and the ones we find along the way." Later, as the others chatted, I stood at the railing, looking out over the city lights. Jessica joined me, slipping her hand into mine. "Penny for your thoughts?" I smiled. I was just thinking about how different my life is from what I had planned. A year ago, I was hiding in a safe house, terrified and isolated. Now I have purpose, community, even happiness I never expected. "Because you stood your ground when it mattered most," she said. "And because I learned who I could truly count on," I replied, looking back at the small group of people who had proven their loyalty through the hardest times. The path had been unimaginably difficult, paved with betrayal, danger, and profound loss. But it had also revealed strengths I never knew I possessed, and connections more genuine than any I had known before. In the end, the truth had not only set me free, but had given me a life with deeper meaning than the one I had left behind. Standing in the safety of my new home, surrounded by people who had demonstrated true loyalty, I realized that the most valuable lesson was not about financial crimes or corporate ethics, but about the courage to stand alone for truth when necessary, and the wisdom to recognize genuine allies among those who claim to support you. Some truths come at a terrible price, but without people willing to pay that price, justice remains an empty word. I had paid dearly for my stand, but looking at what had grown from that sacrifice, I would make the same choice again without hesitation. Have you ever been in a situation where someone close to you doubted you when you needed their support the most? How did you handle that betrayal of trust? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more content about personal integrity and standing up for what is right, even when it is difficult. And share this video with someone who might need encouragement to speak their truth today. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the hardest choice is also the only choice that lets you live with yourself afterward.